should we just start again?
Up to you. Start again.
Yeah. So we know that they hear us now. Can we check that?
Do a sound check. Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you hear me?
Let's see. Om vi har några som tittar så kommentera gärna om det funkar.
Hör ni någonting?
I hear. Niël, do you want to talk?
2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Madeleine.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then we also have that one. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
And we'll see if we have anyone watching. You can just.
Okay, so let's.
No, it's funking. Now it works. There we go. Woohoo, woohoo. Okay, that actually needs this one.
Fantastic. Good.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so we will start from the beginning. Everyone had a little bit of patience. Thank you very much for that. So we'll skip the Swedish introduction and go straight into the English one. So I'm sitting here. I don't know if they did hear you when you said you're in South Africa, Daniella. We don't know. Anyways, Daniella is in South Africa and I am in South Africa and we are both Swedish and we're sitting here with a fantastic winemaker of Nederburg, Niël Groenewald. And we are now sitting here with a glass of rosé. And I'm sure that if you guys have been buying your rosé already, you poured it and you probably drank it as well. Because this wine it was launched last week, and it's not meant to be a serious rosé. It's supposed to be one you chill, you pour into your glass, you enjoy the freshness, you enjoy the strawberry fruited style, really round and gentle and superbly drinkable. Nothing really fancy, complex, but who drinks that many complex rosés? There's very few people out there that really want a serious one. So this is a happy one, a juicy, friendly, quaffable, anything that you need in the sunshine of South Africa anyways. In Sweden it's still snowing and it's a bit cold. So I don't know if they're in the rosé mood, but they will be very soon.
I can imagine they will be.
Yeah.
So yeah, just on the rosé, you've basically said everything that there is to say. Maybe the varietals, Pinotage, Merlot and Shiraz. And the grapes are farmed specifically for rosé, so you'll see also quite a nice low alcohol, about 11%, so to help with the freshness. And this is typically what I would call a porch pourer. So you're sitting somewhere on a stoop and you're having a bottle and with friends, with food, without food, doesn't matter, as long as the glasses are full and there's lots of noise and happy noises.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
And that's a good word for South Africa, stoop. It's like the veranda, the porch, or where you're actually sitting outside.
That's what sunlight.
Yeah. And so, just to repeat what I said when you guys didn't hear, Niël has taken over the leadership of Nederburg, and in the last three some years, is it 3 or 4 years? 3 years. Yeah. I have been tasting Nederburg wines for the last, I would say, 25, 30 years, and they have been always a really great brand and a great producer, but also with great strength in terms of volume produced. But there has been a few years when they haven't been that much available on the monopoly shelves. But now there's some action happening, and therefore we thought it would be a very interesting thing to actually bring these wines to a tasting while we're here. And so the changes, if I ask you, Niël, what has been the focus for you since you came in, and what has where do you want to take Nederburg in the next 5 years?
Sure. In the next 5 years, I want Nederburg to be known again for being the country's leading cab and cab-based blend producer. So that's what we've always been, and definitely that's something that we need to refocus on. And we've got some amazing sources of fruit, some amazing growers that grow good fruit for us. So, and it's really about step changing. So I call it Nederburg 2.0.
Yeah.
So really applying that focus within the winery, within the vineyards, all the way through to our markets, to our agents, so that they understand that this is really what we're good at, and this is what we'll drive. We can't be everything for everyone,
No.
and I don't believe in doing that either. So you need some form of focus to really exceed and excel in what you do.
Yeah. So if we, like we talked about before, you have how many markets? 82 markets? 82 markets. So if you have 82 markets, you have a lot of people sitting on the other side telling you what their people want to drink, and you know, it's like influencing you. But you've also, how many wines did you produce, like in the portfolio when you came
Sure.
in?
When I arrived, there was about 124 wines.
Yeah.
That's different wines. That's not SKUs, so
No.
you can still have different pack changes.
Yeah.
So you can have a 6-pack, a 12-pack, a 1.5 liter. That's, I mean, added up for SKUs was over 500.
Wow.
So we brought it down to about 90, and on the way to bring it down to 24.
So
which will
focus
really be
is
a
your
nice-
key word.
It is definitely, that's
yeah.
the word everybody gets tired when I say it, but
Yeah. If you
and
keep
it's
going,
and it's about going back to basics. So
exactly.
if you can do the basics right, and you start doing 1% of everything that you do better, then you actually, at the end of the day, you exceed.
And why did you decide on Cabernet-based blends and Cabernets? Is that because you see that the growers, that's the strength of your growers?
It's the strength of our growers. It's also, it's an easy variety. It's international variety that people understand, and we've already had the volume base. So if you within any business, you've got that 80-20 principle. If you start applying that 80-20, then you'll see that 80% of your business already comes from it. So then it's about cleaning up the 20 and making sure that the 20 that you had there, rather start looking at innovation again, back into your core focus. But also you can't just produce 1 or 2 wines, because then the winemakers won't be challenged, and the winery needs to be challenged, and it needs to be innovative as well in new styles, new trends. So it's about bringing something in, but then if you bring something in, you take something out. You don't just add.
And that's the kill your darlings type of thing. You have to kill your darlings, and it hurts if you've been around for a long time. But since you came in and you have a new vision, then it's easier for you to actually say, we have to slaughter a few things to be able to focus and do really well. And for the white side, what is the focus?
The white side would be Chardonnay, and then also Chenin Blanc. So Chenin Blanc, and specifically old vine that we'll taste tonight. And that talks to one of our pillars. I mean, our pillars would be innovation, it would be sustainability, it would be excellence in the sense of the care-based blends and our people. But sustainability to me goes a lot wider, with having, for instance, old vine Chenin, that you don't have to replant vineyards if they're 20 years old, which is the standard practice in South Africa. If you can create beautiful products where you can actually have low-yielding vines go into, and it's still sustainable, then sustainability all the way through the channel actually makes sense, from grower to whoever tastes the wine eventually. So there'll definitely be an element of Chenin. I've been a very big fan of Chenin for many years. So and I love the style that we make here. So
Chenin is such a rock star in South Africa. It can do anything from beautiful sparklings to really beautiful sweet wines. But the wine styles of the dry white Chenin, anything from fruity and crunchy and lively to super serious and really competition of the greatest wines of the Loire.
oh, for sure.
And even the Loire wines, they have been starting to put Chenin Blanc on their labels because of South Africa is actually influencing them to show that they have a variety which needs to be actually marketed because of South Africa's done so well for it.
And I think the association that we've got with Chenin Blanc is also a very strong association, similar to the Pinotage association. It's very strong. The growers are very interactive with the association, and it's about cooperation before competition. And that's always good to see that, if you can grow the category and then after that you start competing. Competition is not internal, it's actually external to South Africa.
Versus the Pinotage where you compete within your country, because there's I've only tasted like a New Zealand Pinotage once, and that apart from that it's like you don't find it. Should we ask Daniella to throw our Chenin into our hands so we can pour it?
Thank you, Daniella.
Because this one is an interesting one.
All right, so this is the brand new packaging, Heritage Heroes. Is a range, and the range pays tribute to important people in the existence of Nederburg and where Nederburg is today. So Nederburg is one of the oldest wineries, was founded in 1792, and this wine is called the Äntligen, and it's named after the original founder, Philippus Wolfhard. So Äntligen to me, not just starting Nederburg, but also Shannon being the anchor of the industry. And I think currently still about 16-17% of plantings is still Shannon Blanc, and like you touched on the versatility, but also then it being old vine. So with old vines, it's really about preserving that fruit and the fruit source that we've got. So beautiful wine, and also stylistically different to what you would have found in the past. Now it's all about expression of terroir. So we've got some beautiful old clay amphora, some concrete, some older barrels that we use instead of the newer style of Shannon that we used to produce in South Africa.
And I think for you that have bought this wine, I've just found out that the 2018 that was on the shelf, or that you could order, it's sold out. So the next one to come on to that listing is going to be the 2020, and that's what we have here. And I have to be honest and say that the 2018, there was a few years of a strong drought in South Africa, and the longer the vines have been suffering a drought, the tougher it is for it to produce fruit that is not going to be like super concentrated and very honeyed and very rich. So for you guys that are sitting at home and have the 18, I can promise you that the shift into the 20 vintage is enormous. They're both beautiful wines, but as Niël says, like using amphoras and using concrete and older barrels. I also think that the 18 feels, it's like made in a bigger style.
It is. It's got broader shoulders. So I think maybe 18, when I got here, my shoulders were a lot broader than my house. So it was made in that style, and now they're starting to get a bit narrower.
Exactly. So now you have
So it's
more
a bit
precision,
more
more linearity, more
and
precision.
then we've got a stunning white winemaker that plays to the strengths. So it's really he's like a precision fanatic. So the smallest detail actually makes a lot of difference to it.
I think it's worth mentioning. Niël talked about this old vine sticker, and that is maybe Daniella can show it a little bit more obvious in the picture. But it is a real important part of the South African wine industry development, and to actually think about how South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Chile and Argentina, as the big wine countries in the southern hemisphere, they're always seen as the new world. The new world is supposed to have just planted varieties recently and, just produced wine for such a short time. But South Africa celebrated 363 years of having produced wines just last week. And this old vine heritage is super important. Which year was this vineyard planted? 82?
83.
83. And that is a sticker that is on the label of the bottle, or on the bottle as a sticker. And it indicates that there's a lot of heritage. And there's an organization that has started to look up all these old vineyards and to find out which year were they planted, just to bring a bit more pride into old vineyards. And no guarantee that every old vine produces beautiful fruit, but there's a certain quality anyways, because of the root system has established itself through the years, and naturally you will have a much more interesting wine. Then there might be old vines sitting in places where they maybe shouldn't be, but there are very few of those.
Well, definitely there's with all the competitive products that you've got, a lot of the old vines that don't go into the correct wine would have been pulled up and replaced with nectarines or plums or citrus or whatever. Interesting, just you talking about our celebration of, I was having a conversation with Daniella earlier on that I don't know of another country where we've got well documented exactly the first time wine was made in the country, like in South Africa. We know it was in 1657, the 2nd of February. It was all in the notes of Jan van Riebeeck. So other countries, we don't know the exact date, but there was some wild fermentation happening in a can somewhere.
So if we look upon this wine, it has that refreshing Chenin style, but it also has a lot of texture, and it has weight, but it has so much liveliness and energy. So obviously, when I talked to you before, I asked how you've changed the style through these years you've been here. But you're saying you're picking in different lots, and you're picking earlier, and you're also making sure that the wine, the more elegant it is, and the more linear it is, it will be much more easy to see if the place has a strong story to tell. The bigger it is, you lose the place, right?
You do, and there's too much outside influence there.
Yeah.
So this is really about creating a platform. The platform for me is something like amphora or wild fermentation. So having different components to make the wine interesting and having different layers of fruit. But overall, the site still needs to speak. So you've got the platform, the dance floor, and then the wine needs to dance on it. That's what we're trying to create here.
Good. Should we move over to the reds?
Any questions?
Yeah.
No questions so far.
We're telling them everything they need to know.
Yes, but 6.8. I have no idea if they hear me because I don't have a microphone now. But if you have any questions, just go ahead, and we will. Well, we have two experts here that can answer all your questions. So yeah.
Pass on the red.
Which one would you like to start with?
The brewmaster.
The brewmaster?
Yes.
There we go. Maybe I'll actually have it.
So tell us about this wine. Why is it called Brewmaster? A short little story about that, but I would love to hear what drives this wine, which variety, and what would you like to achieve here?
Okay, so this wine is our expression of a Bordeaux blend. It's cab based, so it talks to our strengths and with cab based blends. We've got another blend in our wine range that we're not tasting tonight called Baron, which is the biggest South African red blend. Every 15 seconds a bottle gets opened, just to give you an
almost
indication.
like a Moët Chandon when you're talking that they also have the seconds in between.
Yes. So with Brewmaster, it's really showing our excellence then with Cab, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot. Every good Cabernet always has a little bit of Petit Verdot in there.
For sure.
Love the variety, love the freshness in there. The Brewmaster comes from naming a gentleman called Arnold Grauer, and he was quite important in the history of Nederburg. He bought the farm in the 1930s, and from the 1930s all the way through to the 1970s, he was the owner, him and his wife Ilse Grauer, and they also appointed a person called Günter Bruzel. And Günter Bruzel to me is an absolute legend. He was one of the idols that I've always wanted to meet, and I'm now in the fortunate position to have lunch with him once a month. And the stories that he tells is just amazing. So we'll taste one of his wines a bit later on, or him starting the style of wine in South Africa. But Arnold, he actually came from the beer industry, but that didn't make him the brewmaster. He had a passion for tea and brewing of tea.
Wow.
So that's where the brewmaster. So that's where the brewmaster then actually comes in. So Arnold Grauer, the brewmaster. And the
So
expert in tea.
what is the strength, would you say, if you look at Cabernet from all over the world, Stellenbosch and this area where we are, we're now in Paarl, but we're right, I mean, I think that most of your grapes come around this part of Stellenbosch area, and maybe some from the Durbanville area.
Coastal area. So Philadelphia, strong area. A big area for us would be Durbanville, Philadelphia, also some from Darling.
So you're looking at quite cool climates, and that when cool climates, Cabernets, usually you get a lot more fragrance, you get a little bit longer hang time, you get more exposed with the winds and everything, and maybe not guaranteed irrigation either, so it puts a bit of stress. But you get a lot of fragrance and a lot of freshness, and also a bit of that red fruit comes through that you would pick up. But what do you see, because I love this discussion about the herbal qualities in Cabernet. And I think too many winemakers are afraid of allowing the DNA of the Cabernet to actually show itself in a blend. And that goes back to all those days where the old Bordeaux bad vintages, they were green and lean and unripe. Yeah. But green and lean is very different from having a little whiff of a dried herb or
like you said, it's in the DNA. So it's definitely there.
Yeah. So why are we going to chase it away?
I won't. I'll make sure that the wines aren't green. No. So I don't want to taste this wine blind and think it might be a Sauvignon Blanc. You've gone too far.
You've gone wrong, yeah.
But definitely as a layer and as a component, there's nothing wrong with it. That herbaceous character. Sometimes, depending on where the grapes are grown, you get that minty spearmint character, which can also be very interesting. And
gives you freshness. Huh?
Wine does give you freshness, and that's a buzzword nowadays in wine.
Yeah.
So less oak, more freshness.
Yeah.
And definitely it adds to it. The Petit Verdot again that brings the acidity and the structure.
Yeah.
So we might harvest our Cabernets not fully ripe because I feel that you lose a lot of the flavor if you really go very ripe, dark, intense. Then you need to start building flavor in again with barrels, and then it becomes a winemaker's wine.
Exactly.
And we should be fermentation controllers. We're just guiding the process.
Yeah.
We've got the right fruit. We've got grape growers that were converted to wine growers. They know what they grow for which product they grow it, and then it's about just guiding the process.
Yeah.
And we're actually in HR because we need to keep a lot of yeast cells happy. If you don't keep them happy, 6 million per milliliter, then you've got a strike on hand, and then you've got a mess.
Okay, so the other varieties, we have all the 5. Do you sense that the Cabernet is always going to be the driving factor, and Petit Verdot is going to be the one that just pulls it all together, lifts the perfume, give you a bit of power as well, and texture and mouthfeel.
Yeah, Petit Verdot to me is an amazing variety. I mean, we've obviously with our focus on planting Cabernet and being the Cabernet house of South Africa, we've also invested in growing grapes and planting more grapes, and specifically Cabernet. But with Cabernet, you also plant Petit Verdot.
Yeah,
it's just the two.
They just love each other.
It's like a tango.
Yeah,
they really
happy
just
marriage.
work together. Happy marriage. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also when I see the personalities of these 2 varieties, I can see how the Petit Verdot brings a bit of that blackness and inkiness that also comes in and puts a little bit like layers in between that herbal aromatic, and just makes that a beautiful thing instead of something that you would, say it has greenness.
Exactly. And then the Merlot is always there just to build the wine a bit. I mean, the Merlots that we use in this blend has got quite broad shoulders, and also no green. So I don't like that Madagascar green peppercorn sauce flavors.
No, you don't like that. No.
So it needs to be low yielding vineyards. I mean, the vineyard really needs to suffer and maybe just smell water, not really be irrigated.
Right. How are we looking?
They might not hear me now because now finally I have this sound perfect, I hope, because some technical problems in South Africa. However, I have loads of questions now.
Okay.
And you might need to repeat them.
Yeah.
But first of all, when is the new vintage of Anchorman?
2020
When is it
will
arriving?
arrive as soon as they order it. So
it's on the boat.
It's on the boat.
It's on the boat.
It's on the boat, on the way to Sweden.
Yeah.
Perfect. Then we have another one. I noticed that not all the bottles have screw caps. Some of them have screw cap and some of them are under cork. Why is that?
So do we need to repeat? No, they hear you. Yeah. I think I'm not the one making the decisions here, that's for sure. But I think more wine should be under screw cap. It is absolutely amazing how well it keeps the wine fresh, and it's just an image in people's mind that if there's a cork in the bottle, it's a better wine. That is so stupid, and I wish that all consumers would start understanding that it's not about the closure, it's about what's in the bottle. So the closure will guarantee, and I very, very, very seldom run into bottles which have screw cap and have faults, but I very often run into bottles with a cork which has faults, and that is way too often.
That's true. Cork can stand in a way of really having an enjoyable evening.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans of making an MCC?
We do have an MCC.
You have an MCC already.
We've got a Chardonnay Pinot Noir MCC, 5 years on the lease. Absolutely beautiful product. So yeah, I think we've tasted it already today. So we've got one. It's mostly sold from the brand home, and we do quite a bit of weddings and functions from the brand home. So it's something special from here, and then also online. So we don't necessarily take it into the trade.
Okay, another one. Which grape is most difficult to work with?
Sure. For me personally, it would be Pinot Noir. I think we've got very few sites that really do great Pinot Noir, and Pinot Noir can be either very good or very bad depending on the vintage. So yeah, that would be the one that I've experienced having the most difficulty with working. After that, strangely enough, would be Merlot. So Merlot doesn't react the same way to analysis or to winemaking practices like all the other red grapes. It always catches you off guard. It's like something punches you in the wind. So you think you might add 1 gram of sugar or 1 gram of acidity, and then eventually the analysis come back and it looks like you've added 4 grams. It's just Merlot it's like the stepchild at this point. Wow. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Okay, and how does it work with aging in barrels in this hot climate? Madeleine, can you comment that I saw that someone wrote that you can't hear me properly, but that's because I don't have a mic on.
Okay, so someone had a question about how it works with aging wines in barrels in a hot climate, and then I would say this is not a hot climate. This climate could be related to a Mediterranean climate. There will be hot days, and there is every year there's a heat wave in the summer, and it usually hits like 38 and maybe up to 40, and it does it for a couple of days, and that is always the challenge. But apart from that, the climate in this Cape or Western Cape or in where we are, the key is cool evenings and warm days and cool mornings, and the breeze from the ocean is extremely important. So if you're 50 kilometers away from the ocean, you will definitely have an effect of the ocean breeze. If you're further inland, you will have more continental, so you will have colder winters and you will have hotter summers, but then you will adapt your varieties grown in those climates. So I think what we're talking about here in these wines that we're tasting, they're mostly grown alongside like ocean influenced areas, so therefore we couldn't say it's a hot climate really. And aging wine in barrels, it's quite easy because you have temperature control in the cellar. So
the age is 16 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, exactly.
And also the grapes that would be destined for going into aging for barrels would be areas that I call cool sunshine areas.
Yeah.
So you either have the cooling effect from the ocean or from altitude.
Yeah.
So but enough sunlight.
Exactly. Yeah. Right, so that was Daniella's question. I wonder, do we have another question, yes, or should we move on to the next one?
No, this could be fun, I think. I've heard about the expression shakalaka.
Yeah.
What is that?
All right, so shakalaka is something that you eat. Okay. It's a mixture of quite a few ingredients and spicy. So you would have, it's tomato based, so tomato, aubergines, some onions, some spices, some curry spices, sometimes some chilies. So chakalaka is, it's a strong sauce that you use. It's a sauce, you find it in tins, you can make it yourself. So it's something that works beautifully with pap. So pap being maize meal, that's
like porridge.
Like porridge, but it's a savory dish. So that's shakalaka.
Shakalaka. It's a lovely name.
It is.
Okay, last one before I let you continue with the wines. Do you only use oak barrels or any other woods or any other type of?
Yeah. So depending on the style of wine, and the wines that we're tasting tonight is only aged in oak barrels. We do
apart from the Chenin, which had a bit of concrete and amphora.
Exactly. And the Chenin Blanc has got different ways, but no alternative oak is being used in any of the wines. I've got some entry-level ranges that uses alternative oak. So, but then the tank would be lined with the oak, and you would have micro-oxygenation and the process of controlled oak that it's actually given. But that depends on the price point. So of the wines. But none of these wines, they would all spend time in barrel. Combination of first, second, third, and fourth full barrels.
Would you also look towards using foeders, like more like 1,200 or 2,500 liter?
We do. So we would normally age in 300 and 500 liter barrels, and then the blend would be made up, and then it marries in a foeder. So and it would stay there for another 6 months. So just to polish off the tannins as a final blend.
It's something that I've seen a lot in South Africa, that winemakers go more and more towards 500 liter barrels and more towards foeders that are larger size and gives you less oak impact, and it allows place to shine through. And that's beautiful
and it also
change.
keeps the freshness because of the redox potential. So the wine is just much more reductive in that state.
Right, so what we have in front of us is something called private bin, 2 centuries.
That's right.
Tell us.
So this would be one of the wines that creates the halo effect over Nederburg in Cabernet. So the first Cabernet that we're tasting tonight, it's part of our strength, our core.
And it's 100%.
This is not 100% Cabernet.
Did it love a little bit of a petit
Verdot? Any good chef would have some salt and pepper. The petit verdot was the salt in this. So you need some petit verdot in here. It's small productions that we make. And there's 2 wines in the private bin range, the 2 centuries and the R163. So 2 centuries is something that's grown in the coastal region. We've got 4 sites, and generally we'll find the best sites. So each vintage will have 2 centuries, really expressing the greatness of the vintage. And then the R163, the one that we've not released yet, we'll only release it now for the first time in April, would be Paul specific. So from the site very close to the cellar. But this is the one that's already in the past won the awards at the International Wine Spirits Competition for the best Cabernet in the world. So there's been some beautiful awards acclaimed to this wine, and that's why we wanted to keep it as well in the range.
And you know, when we tasted earlier today the different Cabernets, we all agreed that the lighter styles were more red fruited, and then we moved into a little bit more blue fruited, and now we're going into the black spectrum. So now it's graphite, it's gravel, it's black, it's really concentrated, but it's not one of those massive broad-shouldered powerhouses. It's
not America.
No,
so it's still South
very
Africa.
Classic, very classic elegance.
Very classic in style. I fully agree, and it's good for me to be able to distinguish, and I'm glad you mentioned the red, the blue, and the black, because it's also the different ripeness levels of Cabernet fruit, and I sometimes think we make it too complicated for our customers. So if you can just say, give me a red Cabernet, then everybody knows what you're going to get. You're going to get those cherries, the red cherries, the maraschino cherry type of flavors.
Most people think always of cassis when it comes to Cabernet, and that's the thing that I have picked up much more in South Africa now in the last months that I've been spending here, that they're more and more red fruited, and you allow them to be more fragrant and not so extracted, and you look at the color and you're like, is this really Cabernet? But then it's like it's got life and red fruit and not that blackcurrant driven characteristic.
And what Nederburg was really well known for in the 1970s was a wine called Nederburg Paul Cabernet. And the story that Michael Friedman tells me was that when he started in the industry, he's a wine critic and journalist. When he started in the industry, there was a choice of 3 wines that he could pay R1.79 for, which is in those days
1 krona.
The 1 krona. So this is in the 1970s. It was either a bottle of Nederburg Paul Cabernet, or a bottle of Chateau Libertas, or a bottle of Romani Conti.
Oh my goodness!
So those 3 wines. So somewhere we went wrong, and we
somewhere
need to start
someone did the right thing, huh?
Exactly. So we need to start doing the right thing more often. But that wine always had a percentage of Cinza in it. So, and also giving you that lower alcohol. So I'm still working on a wine with a 12%. So a cab that can be drank on ice. So watch the space.
And what I must say, this wine is also one of those vintages that we would say they're a part of the drought years, but it shines in freshness, and it doesn't feel like it suffered from the drought at all.
No, luckily this vineyard does have subsequent irrigation, so you could give it. And it's also an old vine, so the roots are so deep,
solid,
it can really handle stress, and then you just play with yield.
Yeah.
But it's also exposed to all the elements and the weather, so the wind actually does the suckering for you.
Yeah.
It's minimum that you have to do in there.
Yeah.
You go and you do 2 or 3 pickings. So, and actually with Verizon, you'll mark the bunches because the yields are so low. You'll mark them when they shine through, so that you can actually start picking them separately as well.
Wow.
So that's the level of detail that you go into if you really
fantastic.
focus.
Okay, so with this, having this in mind, I really understand why you are focusing on Cabernet. Cabernet is something that South Africa should be so much more famous for. I wonder where the secret lies of where you can get the Cabernet to fly from South Africa.
Well,
You're going to do your best, huh?
Let's talk in 18 months' time, and then we'll revisit this conversation.
Okay, we have another wine to show, and it's a sweet wine.
It is.
It is the magic one, the one that I said I was so happy. Once I ran into this wine, it was probably like around vintage 98 or 99 or something like that. How long has it been, this wine has been produced, the Noble Late Harvest?
This has been done since 1963.
Wow.
And this went together with the Edelkür, which is also something that Nederburg is very famous for. And this came from the gentleman that I mentioned earlier on, Günther Brusel.
Yeah.
So coming from Germany, he wanted to make a sweet style. And amazing, the wine law in the 60s, in the 1960s, didn't allow for this style of wine to be produced and sold as wine, because the maximum level of sugar that was allowed in the wine was 30 grams a liter. So you couldn't have it certified. You had those bus tickets to say superior. You couldn't have any of that done. And that was also the beginning of the wine auction. So where he actually sold the wine. But
that's where it became famous.
Before they got to the wine auction, the inspectors and the wine inspectors, they actually slept in the cellar, making sure that he wasn't adding any sugar to the tank, because it was just unheard of to have a wine with 120, 130 grams of sugar as what we've got today.
So this is Chenin based, and I know you said that there's a little bit of muscat in it as well.
Muscat Alexandri.
Yeah. Just lifts the floweriness of the wine. But it's got that beautiful peachiness, and it's got the honeyed, but it's got so much freshness.
It's just an amazing one. I mean, this is still the top scoring wine without a doubt. I mean, last year at one of the biggest wine shows, the International Wine Spirits Challenge, it got 98 points. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing year after year that it still shines.
And I think a lot of consumers are worried about sweet wines because they think that it's going to be cloying. But with Chenin Blanc and the incredible acidity that variety has, it doesn't matter how sweet the grapes become, because that acid is just racing through.
Yeah. Especially if it's botrytis, as in this style. So the botrytis also gives you all that other beautiful acidities that don't disappear in the harvesting.
And I think probably what I said before was not recorded because the technique was not working. But I said that this wine was launched in Sweden somewhere around 2005 or something like that. And I remember before I became a buyer, I tasted this wine and I was blown away how a sweet wine of this quality could be sold as such, I wouldn't say cheap, because it's still not cheap, but seriously like underpriced.
The value equation is there.
Yeah, for sure. And so when this wine won the tender for the monopoly and was listed, it's been selling for 17 or 18 years.
That's amazing.
And it's so nice to see that the sales of the sweet wines overall are increasing. And people might just realize now that Coca-Cola is as sweet, but that they drink a half a liter of, and this you drink maybe 8 centiliters of. So you can definitely allow yourself to have more sweet wine more often.
And this blows your mind. I mean,
It does.
It's
It just
absolutely
puts a
amazing. About
smile.
8 centiliters, you might be sniffing and swirling and tasting on for at least 15, 20 minutes. Whereas Coca-Cola, it's like 2 or 3 glasses and that's it.
And people eat kanelbulle, that would be the cinnamon rolls. And they treat themselves to one of those once in a while as well. So I think we could do it.
For sure.
Yeah. So Daniela, what do you think? We've got more questions.
About the sweet wine, what do you pair with it?
Right.
Good question.
Okay.
So what do you eat for this lovely, lovely wine?
I get one picture straight away. I get it doesn't necessarily need to be like a creme brulee, but something like a panna cotta or something. And then fresh berries, lots of fresh berries, raspberries and maybe a bit of you can put mango or peaches or apricots or whatever. That would be absolutely lovely. Yeah, I think apple pie, the Swedish way as well.
Pie.
Yeah.
Have you got something similar to foie gras?
Yeah, if you eat,
those type of
or chicken liver parfait or something. Yeah.
That can also work well. Or just on its own.
More questions.
So just try.
A more serious question.
Yep.
How has COVID impacted your business?
Sure, that's an interesting one. You know what? We had, obviously South Africa was hit quite hard with COVID in the sense of not being able to sell wine locally for a long time. We had 17 weeks of not trading. We actually, as Nederburg, had one of the best years in the history without trading, because there was definitely an illicit market that opened up when there was no formal market, and people burnt their fingers so terribly with buying small batches from everywhere that the portions where the illicit trade or where we could actually sell, people stockpiled. And they went back to traditional brands that they knew and trusted, like the Simon Sachs, the Canon, the Nederburg. So we've actually had a really good year, and internationally we could export, and because of our wide footprint, it's we really can't complain. So in that sense, COVID actually, was not such a big effect on us. You would never make up some lost sales, but it also shows that everybody did their part all the way through, from the grower to the salesperson, making sure that everybody knows we've got a crisis, we need to stand together, and we're going to do it. And that's amazing. It's a great achievement to actually show that you can, with a pandemic like that, still climb out on top.
Yeah. And that's why I'm here as well. The pandemic sent me to South Africa. Thank God.
Thank God.
Thank
It can be
God.
worse places.
I know, for sure. Okay, any more?
Not right now, no. I think we can just give it a few seconds and see if there are any last questions.
Yeah.
Or if you have anything you would like to add that you think we haven't talked about. Now it's your
Our chance.
Maybe one point that I can still talk about is the sustainability, and how important sustainability for us is as Nederburg, as a wine brand. It's not just the right thing to do. I believe that you need to leave your soils in a better state than what you received it, and all our growers buy into it. And obviously we've got the seal with the IPW and the integrated sustainability seal, so where you've got social responsibility but also environmental responsibility, but then also going with the effect of electricity and power on our plant, with all our solar power that we've got to get off the grid, being a lot more water conscious when it comes to where we plant grapes, which type of rootstocks we use, better drought resistance. Having a large component of grapes also being done in rosé, because then you can actually harvest them earlier, so that you don't have that impact on the vine. So the old vines, as we spoke about, so having financial sustainability and social sustainability really important into the DNA of Nederburg, and pushing that quite hard. And it's not something that's one project or two projects. It's a lot of small things that starts adding up to do the right thing, and do the right thing when nobody's watching. And that to me is always the
that's a very good one.
That's the true way of doing it, is doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll remember that one.
One question here. Is it possible to visit Nederburg? And can you stay here is the question as well.
You can't stay on the farm, but you can stay very close by. So we've got, and you can definitely visit. So we've got a beautiful restaurant, we've got beautiful tasting facilities, we've got beautiful front of house people, and you would have met them
Super
today.
service,
so
huh?
super.
Service ever.
It is amazing. So, and they'll be able to help you with accommodation in Paul, arrange shuttles to come here, drive me home. So if you have too much to drink, so
Never too much.
But
too much to drive.
Too much to drive. Then they'll arrange transporting it back home. So all of that can definitely be done. And you can just visit our website, nederburgwines.com.
Nederburgwines.com. Awesome. So one here from Stefan. He says, I missed in the beginning about Drosti. Is it also made by Nederburg? What's the question?
Yeah, no, Droste is not made by Nederburg. It's made by the Salad Droste Hof is a brand. It's a lifestyle brand that we've got, and it's made at one of the wineries in Stellenbosch. That's owned by Ställ, and Ställ is the owner of numerous brands: Droste, Germinal Hills, Zonnebloem, Flöderkap, Nederburg. Because of Droste and its footprint then in the Swedish monopoly, we just found it good to actually show that tonight as well, because it's a brand new launch. I'm quite familiar with the wine because before my position as managing director of Nederburg, I was the head winemaker. So, and yeah, know the wine quite well. So I was quite comfortable to show that as well, together with Madeleine. So just to show something new from South Africa that you can order now.
Nice.
Good.
Good.
So, are we going to wave goodbye and say thank you to all the people that have watched? Have you found out how many were actually joining us? Were there a lot of?
Since we had a lot of, like in the beginning, there were a lot of people watching, but there are a little bit of technical problems.
Then you lose a bit of interest, and then you go and do something else.
I think there were actually some. Well, they can't really hear me, but there were actually a few people sitting like, I can steal that one. But no, I noticed there are some people were sitting 4 people together in a group, and many were sitting 2 and 2. So we had at least 70 times maybe 2. So around 140 people joined us this evening from Sweden, and we are in South Africa.
Yeah.
How lovely is it to be able to actually combine that?
It's the advantage of COVID.
Yeah, we've learned to do these things. Yeah. And actually last year, I think it was maybe around April or March, then you were in Stockholm and I was in Stellenbosch, and we did one of these things when we were linked together, and it was amazing. Yeah. So it was great. Super.
Good things can come out of COVID as well. And tusen tack till alla som har tittat på den här sändningen ikväll. Som sagt, ursäkta strulet, men vi löste det så gott vi kunde. Och det har ju funkat bra till slut. Jättekul att kunna göra det här från Sydafrika också på resande fot. Nästa vecka så är jag tillbaka med Sverige igen. På torsdag så kommer jag och Anders Madeleine prata servering. Då ska vi gå igenom temperatur, glas, luftning, dekantering. Så att det ska bli jättespännande. Men då är jag hemma i kalla Sverige igen. Så himla häftigt att ha gjort det här tillsammans med Madeleine. Och thank you, Niël!
It's a big pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.